So we're all familiar with the concept of location-based advertising, but how do you really measure its success? And what are the best ways to boost performance? Here to answer that and other questions are the Head of Marketing for XAD, Monica Ho, and Senior Vice President, Chief Marketing Officer of Dennys, John Dillon. Have fun.
Everyone. So that was a wonderful presentation from Charlie, and we're up here. We have actually a deck chock full of data, so hope you guys are ready for that this early in the morning. Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. For those of you that didn't really hear, I run marketing for XAD. We're a global location ad platform which leverages the context of location to serve meaningful and relevant ads. And I'm honored to be joined on stage today with John Dillon, who is the SVP and CMO of Dennys. And I'll let John give a little introduction on himself as well.
That's it. I'm with Dennys, and I am thrilled to be here. Actually, to think a few years ago, if somebody would have said Dennys would be presenting at a mobile marketing conference, I would have said, "What the heck? Seriously?" But we are. So I'm proud to be here. Proud to partner with XAD. I've been with Dennys about 7 years total. Before that, I was with Pizza Hut for about 10 years, and with the NBA for a couple years. So I've lived a good life in the marketing world, but thrilled to be at Dennys right now. Thrilled to do what we're doing in the mobile space as well. So excited to talk about that.
Great. So we have a lot of data to get through. We have about 20 minutes to do it, so we're going to jump right in. So what I wanted to start with is just a few slides to kind of set the stage for the discussion. Now, these stats should not come to any surprise to anybody in the room. Over the past 3 to 4 years, we've seen obviously explosive growth in smartphone usage. That's why everybody's here. So 7 out of 10 US consumers now have a smartphone. The usage is growing pretty substantially, and as a result of that, the smartphone or the actual mobile screen has become the dominant screen when you look at overall consumer media time spent in a day. And as a result of that, I mean, there's this tremendous growth and everybody's really excited about it, but it's producing some new and unique challenges for marketers. And Charlie spoke a little bit about it in the first session. And the challenge is really around mobile's relative youth in relation to other advertising mediums. And as a result of that, we see a lot of challenges with how you measure the effectiveness of mobile. And although mobile feels very digital, it's very different than the typical online digital ads that we've become accustomed to, right? And there's a number of factors for that. You've got a small screen, it's a touch screen, a lot of content is consumed on the go. And so marketers have a lot of things to think about when they're actually putting together a mobile campaign. Not to mention, how does it actually complement and work with all the other marketing in the mix? So this is just a quick recap of a study that Nielsen had conducted last year. And what they had done is they surveyed marketers that were doing brand mobile advertising and said, okay, you see all of this usage in mobile, why aren't you spending more dollars in this media? And the top 3 challenges that these brand advertisers came up with all centered around performance. So calculating ROI, lack of success metrics, there's lack of benchmarks, et cetera. And so knowing that trend and being involved in the mobile space, and I'm also very active with the Mobile Marketing Association, we not only became very involved in the MMA's SMOX research that we talked about a little bit earlier today, and there was a wonderful presentation about it yesterday, which measured mobile's effectiveness across the media mix. But XAD actually engaged several national advertisers in our own series of studies around creating mobile benchmarks. And when looking at creating mobile benchmarks, we looked at this very category specific because, again, mobile is not only just unique, but consumers use it very differently depending on their needs, right? So you're going to use your mobile differently if you're hungry versus if you're looking for insurance versus if you needed a new auto or other product or service. And so we engaged with 12 brands, including Dennys. We ran over 70 unique campaigns, and we tested creatives. We tested call to actions, and we tested performance benchmarks. And it was through a lot of this data and analysis that we were able to partner together with Dennys and their agency Optimedia and really take the Dennys campaign to the next level. And when I say next level, I'm talking to actual measurable performance. And not only performance that we achieved one time, but it's been repeatable. And we'll talk about those trends in just a second. But before we go any further, I'm going to hand it over to John to give us a little bit more background on the Dennys brand.
So this is a little bit audience interaction with me, so bear with me. So who has heard of Denny's before today? Thank God. So no, that's pretty typical with what we get. So when I ask that question, I usually get hands raised. It's a little bit different in New York, so we don't have a lot of penetration in New York yet, I should say. But overall, we have a brand that has the luxury of having pretty high brand awareness. And many brand marketers would kill for a number like this, right? 97% brand awareness. Now, let me ask the follow-up question. Who here has been to a Denny's at some point in their lives? Okay, good. If you didn't raise your hand, we'll talk after the presentation. But same thing there. We got about 95% of people say at some point they have been to a Denny's. Okay, so that's again a nice number. Now the challenge is sometimes your greatest strength is your greatest weakness, right? So what we found, when I joined the company several years ago, is these are good numbers, but a lot of times it hadn't been recently. Okay, when we surveyed people around the country a few years ago, we got a lot of this. Oh yeah, Denny's. I loved it. I used to go there. I used to go there during college, high school, whatever. Usually it was after a party or something, right? And for whatever reason, it was always 3 o'clock in the morning. Never 2, never 4, it was always 3 o'clock in the morning that got played back. The data doesn't support that, by the way. It's kind of even throughout the night, but always 3 o'clock in the morning got played back, right? So again, we like that and we embrace that. At the same time, our challenge was how do we change that perception of Denny's in the past to Denny's in the current? If we didn't get that, we got a little bit of this. Denny's, I forgot about Denny's. Isn't there one right on my street corner and I just kind of drive by? So for years we were kind of wallpaper. We hadn't been relevant to our guests in the way that we wanted to be. And again, several years ago, our sales and our traffic and our brand really was struggling. We've been around 62 years now. Started in 1953 as a donut shop, believe it or not, called Danny's Donuts, which I'll tell you that story at some other time, but changed to Denny's, which changed the A for an E for some reason, became Denny's and grew. Now we're 1,700 restaurants, all 50 states, 11 countries, and growing again. But this is a problem we faced several years ago. So we had to attack that head on to turn our business around. And we'll tie it to what we're doing now here in a second. But a few years ago then we did research. We really dug into our guests, the people that loved us and came to us, as well as people that were kind of on the fence. What do you like about the brand? So how do we recapture, as we say here, the hearts and the minds of the Denny's guests and really bring that to life through our communication and our marketing strategies? So our goal was then to build that relationship of what it meant to be a Denny's guest and how we communicate to them. Connect on just not the functional level. Clearly we're a restaurant, we serve food, but it had to be much, much more than that to truly drive our business in a sustainable way. So what they wanted from us, this is a 3-hour presentation I'm giving in a 5-minute summary here, but what they wanted from us is a place they can connect, okay, in the literal sense, but also the emotional sense, a place that's always there for them. Makes sense for us because we're a 24-hour diner, and a place they can be themselves. At Denny's, the beauty of Denny's, you can walk in, people show up in pajamas sometimes. They do, and they're sitting next to somebody in a business suit, right? And we embrace that. For a while we were embarrassed by that, but we've learned to embrace that and really made that part of the DNA of our brand and trumpeted that in some of our communication. So what they were asking for was really this. It was a diner. So since, a few years ago, 2010, 2011, we embraced this notion of Denny's as America's diner. And not a diner in the literal physical sense. That's true, but it's also the emotional sense of what a diner does for somebody. Is that emotional connection that you can come in and be yourself, right? You can relax next to, there's a investment banker next to a plumber, next to a school teacher, and they're integrating and being themselves in a place we call America's Diner. And we launched, I think the next thing is a video I want to show you, which is literally the first advertisement we launched this campaign with back in 2011. See if we can play that.
So what's it going to be?
All the chicken wraps for $4.
Anything else, hon?
Hun? Is it me or do you call everyone hun?
No, I'm Sweetie.
Sunshine.
Love.
Precious.
Cupcake.
Sugar britches.
Whoever you are, Denny's 2468 value menus open to all new ways to save you money, like build your own chicken wraps for $4.
There you go, hon.
Pass the salt, sweetie.
Sure, huh?
Denny's, America's diner is always open.
So that was the start of the campaign. Hopefully you've seen a couple ads since then, but it kind of encapsulates that feeling of America's diner. We have the counter there, people sit next to each other from all different walks of life. We have the corner booth. So again, not just the physical space, but the emotional space of the diner. So quickly then, once we established that, we realized clearly, again, to turn our brand around, what else did we have to do? We had to connect to consumers in different ways than we ever had before. Clearly, TV advertising as a restaurant brand has and will always play a key role because people like to see the food. They need to see the food. We need to make them hungry with the food that we serve, right? So we need to make those mouths water. But it's so many, people in this audience know, it's so much more than that, right? How do we connect, especially to the new generation? You know, we're a brand that is, for a while, 40% of our guests were age 50 or older. Okay? Again, nice thing, but at the same time, we needed to age down our brand. Quick funny story, I made my first presentation to a group of our big franchise board, my first presentation on the job. I was going down this path and I said, you know what, guys, we really need to euthanize our brand. You'll get it here in a second if you didn't get it right away. A little bit of slip of the tongue, didn't quite mean to say it like that, but what I really meant clearly was we need to age down our brand, not euthanize our brand. And make our brand more youthful. So again, that's our objective. We got to keep the current guests we've got. We've got to age down our brand in a different way than before. So TV ads play a role, but it's also technology. It's digital, it's social, it's mobile. So we've done a lot of things, specifically in the digital and social space over the last few years. One of the leading restaurant brands in that space. Again, that's another presentation I'd love to give. But really today we're focused on the mobile piece. And we do have some content that's played into that. And then we'll get into the location-based advertising piece of it as well. So again, we need to have fun. We're a fun brand. We're slightly off-center, right? We embrace that, but for years we were a little bit embarrassed about that. We were trying to be too like everybody else. We're not like everybody else. We need to embrace the DNA of our brand, that America's Diner notion, and a little bit of off-center personality that we have. So we've done things like we've done a branded content series called Always Open, starring Dave Koechner, who literally hosted other celebrities in a Denny's booth and just talked to them. And we got completely, unscripted, unedited, just conversations between Dave Koechner of Anchorman fame and The Office fame and others, and several different, A-level celebrities, and we got over 10 million views for that. So that's one example. Clearly, it was digital, is also on mobile devices. Hashtroids, you see that on the far right. We just did a partnership last year with Atari. So we had products that we were launching called Greatest Hits Remixed, a limited time only offer with flavor news on Grand Slam and Moons Over Miami and some of those Denny's favorites, right? Well, we partnered with Atari and we relaunched classic Atari video games like Asteroids is one, but we reskinned it with Atari and named it Hashtroids. Literally, there's a ketchup bottle shooting hash browns instead of asteroids. So you can get that on your mobile device. So it led to 500,000 downloads of our mobile app because of the partnership with Atari. We had, instead of Breakout, we had Takeout. Instead of Centipede, we had Centipup for a pancake puppy. So we had fun with it, right? So we have a little bit of fun with it. Baconalia, we had the first celebration of bacon. You can go online and order a commemorative bacon plate because after all, bacon is a day to celebrate bacon becomes a national holiday, right? Of course it does. And then the lower right is something is out there right now. I'm going to play you a clip here in a second, but who knows what this is?
Grand Slam.
It's our Grand Slam, exactly. So the number one thing people play back when we say Denny's is the Grand Slam, right? So it's bacon, it's eggs, it's pancakes, it's sausage. A lot of people serve something like that. We have the benefit of having a branded name behind it that does very well with guests since it was launched in 1977. But we've said, okay, how do we be relevant with a fairly commodity-like product, right? How do we make that relevant to this generation? We did this. Okay, an animated series that's online right now, and again, available on our Denny's app, so available mobilely, called The Grand Slams. Let me play you one clip. There's 10 episodes out there right now. This is one of my personal favorites. I'll play it here.
What the? Y'all been hitting the syrup with hash brown again.
We was just having a little fun. No one got hurt or eaten or nothing.
Ugh. How much syrup did you have last night?
syrup.
You'll be fine. You just need a little breakfast in you. Y'all know a good place?
So it's kind of hard to describe that, and you can imagine presenting that to a group of old franchisees, right? But we have the respect of the franchise community to be able to do things like that, and we've had over 11 million views of the Grand Slam series so far. So something that's, again, euthanizing our brand in a different way than ever before. So with that, it's also about, driving butts and seats. That's what I'm judged on as CMO. That's what, everybody in this room for the most part is being judged on with their partners or with their brands. So how do we do that? That's the new world really we're exploring and making some strong progress with the help of XAD and our wonderful agency partner Optimedia. So I'll turn it back over to Monica to talk a little bit more.
So I hope you all enjoyed that. I mean, what an amazing brand and what a great challenge and just to recap a little bit, reaching such a varied audience, trying to remind and re-engage them about their local Denny's, and then ultimately drive the butts and seats. And so that was the challenge of XAD and Optimedia. And I'm not going to be able to go through all of the different campaigns that we've run to date. But this is over a 2-year partnership. We've done a lot of research and testing together. And the reason why I wanted to show a little bit of a timeline is to talk about the performance that we were able to achieve in partnership with Denny's and Optimedia. And this is a strong story because, again, there's a lot of different products that Denny's has on the menu that they want to remind and re-engage their audience with. In addition to that, we're trying to reach a very different audience sometimes than what their typical other media in the mix are reaching. And then we're trying to take these ad units from digital measurement and move them through to offline measurement as well. And so starting with the first campaign that I've got highlighted here in August, it was Build Your Own Pancakes was the actual campaign. And with that campaign, we had targeted banner ads that were running within proximity of the Denny's locations to remind people that you have this Build Your Own Pancakes limited time offer, visit your nearest Denny's. And looking at the performance metrics of that first campaign, it was primarily digital engagement. So landing page engagement, engagement with the locator. And then post that campaign and going into 2014 is when we actually engaged Optimedia and Denny's to do some testing and really start to learn what was resonating with their audience and what was ultimately driving those butts and seats. And so what we started to do is actually expand the targeting into not just the where or the fact that somebody was in proximity to a Denny's, but taking location data to try and understand the who. The audience, based on where these people, we knew that these people liked Denny's, but what else did they like? And then we also extended into a new measurement that's called store visitation lift, where we were actually able to look at people that were exposed to the Denny's ad versus non-exposed, and then measure the actual in-diner visitation. So with Build Your Own Skillet that ran in February, we were actually able to measure an 11% lift to in-store traffic from the campaign. Again, and that's running against a control and exposed group, against natural visitation that Denny's would normally receive. And then later in the year in April, we launched Build Your Own French Toast, and that through just taking all the learnings that we've had from 2013 and all the testing. The thing that's great about this partnership is that Denny's built on top of all those learnings to really evolve the campaign. And so now we're seeing even higher performance. So the Build Your Own French Toast, we saw a lift of in-store traffic of over 30%, 34, almost 35%. So an amazing story on how we actually were able to drive actual meaningful and relevant performance for Denny's. So that's kind of just to recap a little bit of what we've done together over the past 2 years. And what John and I thought would be relevant is to talk about, when you look at all the campaigns and everything that we've done together, what are some best practices that we can talk about that a lot of different marketers can use in their campaigns to get similar performance. And so we want to talk about 3 best practices. So the use of location data, not just to reach people when they're in and around certain places, the where, but using location data to really define the who and the what. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Location. So not just looking at location as my place here and now, but leveraging location, again, for audience, and then also bringing that location through the actual messaging and the creative. Again, to get a consumer to engage with not only the brand, but you want to make the messaging very relevant to them. And then finally, measuring what matters. And in Denny's case, that was offline. In a lot of different brand cases, it's going to be offline as well, because remember, one of the things that's really unique about mobile is that you're reaching a lot of consumers on the go. So their location becomes a very important indicator of intent and context as well. So the very first best practice, what we did was the XAD platform, we're looking at over 300 billion ad impressions in any given month. And we're able to really hone in on visitations that are interesting to our partners. In this case, people that have frequented a Denny's, right? And we take those actual visitation behaviors and we start to look at what other interesting behaviors can we find out about these users based on where they like to go. And so part of the Denny's campaign was building specific mobile audiences from that data. So we looked at things like visitation frequency to a Denny's, as well as other brands that these consumers had affinities toward. So John had mentioned, people remember Denny's really late in the night, but we also wanted to remind and re-engage them throughout their day, in the morning, maybe in the afternoon. And we were able to do that, even though they were not near a Denny's, by leveraging some of the other places we knew they liked to go during those times of day. And I'll let John speak to the way that he's been able to leverage that data throughout other campaigns as well.
Yeah, and really here, I mean, the power is in the data for us, right? So we've utilized the insights we're gaining from this data in a number of different ways, and this just kind of touches the surface of it. The target audience, we narrowed it down versus where we started based on the insights we're able to get from the data based on how they respond to different Denny's messaging. We have expanded through some of the numbers and the analysis that's coming back. We found this Hispanic audience, which is a very important target for us, was much more responsive even than general market. So we've reallocated more digital spend, or more mobile spend to the Hispanic audience based on some of the insights generated. Honed in our competitive list, as Monica mentioned, where they're going in addition to Denny's. So we've expanded our list and contracted them in some ways as well. Key day parts, trading across different day parts, enable that messaging to hit them to where we want them to go versus where they're going sometimes, or sometimes reinforcing where they're going, increasing the frequency of that visit. Really the last point here is segmented competitors, loyalists, where I think we started. How do we get after the ex-competitor, really steal that share? Really, instead, the better success is coming from those that are switching around, which intuitively does make sense. But again, having the data here really enables us to have even more confidence in the conclusions to reallocate the spend and the targeting within our campaign.
The next is leveraging location throughout the campaign. So here we're focusing on creative, and this is just taking a sample from the benchmark test that we were doing. So what we found in the benchmark tests, again, what we were doing in that situation was we were testing a number of different creatives throughout the campaign time frame, running them concurrently and seeing which ones are actually getting the best engagement. And what we found is that when we were actually leveraging Dennys Brand, they were seeing the best engagement when they were also leveraging a location relevant message. Again, reminding consumers that not only is Denny's awesome and you remember them, but there's one right near you right now. And what we found, what you're going to notice in the colors is that these are actual post-click metrics. So after somebody tapped on the initial ad and came to the landing page, what did they do there? And so you see that a lot of consumers were interested in the menu, et cetera. But on the right-hand sidebar, that's when we actually had a location overlay on the creative itself. And we got 43% more taps to the landing page just through that location messaging and just switching out that one component.
Yeah, and this is something we're in the process of doing now and learning from now, quite frankly. So location data as an overlay, as Monica mentioned, on the left side, we have, what you can't read there, probably I can barely even read it here. Left side is within a half mile of Denny's, it says, hey, your nearest store is 0.5 miles away. So that immediacy, hey, you're close, why don't you go ahead and go, right? The second one is if they're within a mile or two, then it's okay, next step is click here for step-by-step, turn-by-turn directions to your closest Denny's, which is within 1 or 2 miles away. And then the third is, okay, you're a little bit further away, so I'm going to give you a couple different options so you can fit it in on your way home. So click on the menu, but you can also click on what's relevant from a location standpoint to drive that guest, again, drive that butt into a seat at Denny's.
And here's the money slide. So were we actually able to drive butts and seats? Well, hold on, I guess I have some stats first. Okay, this is why offline matters. 47% of mobile activity is occurring out of the home. So very relevant for Denny's, reaching that person on the go when they're near, hopefully near a Denny's, or again, reminding them when they're not near Denny's that they should be thinking of that. Still, even though mobile e-commerce is growing, 90% of retail commerce still happens offline. And then finally, 3 out of 4 mobile users, despite maybe even starting their purchase process on the device, are still converting in store. So in store is a very important metric, and one that we're actually starting to use to bridge the gap between what happens online versus offline. So in the case of another one of Denny's campaigns, this was Build Your Own Skillet campaign. What we're highlighting here is when we went to look at measuring not just the digital engagement, but the offline engagement as well, we're measuring store visitation lift. So on the left-hand side, you're seeing the natural visitation that Denny's would have gotten without the campaign. So what we're doing, again, this is a non-exposed group of consumers that Denny was targeting. It's a holdout group. So we saw that visitation was 12%. We then took another segment of that audience and then we exposed them to the ad. And then for those that were exposed to the ad, we saw 28.6% in-store visitation. So really it's 138% over what was natural to Denny's naturally getting without the ad itself. And so that's pretty amazing performance. As you saw before when we saw the summary slide, we've been able to repeat that time and time again through the different types of campaigns that Denny has run, and we've been able to improve the performance as well.
And there's a lot of words on this page, but let me just summarize it. What this means is that, again, as a CMO, this is our money page too, which is it's about quantifiable data. Okay, there's not many, again, this room knows better than anybody, there's not many areas of marketing you can truly quantify your investment and drive that direct correlation. We've used the phrase several times here, but butts in seats. That's what I'm judged on, that's what our sales are based on, is increasing traffic and frequency too. So again, to have the partnership like this and be able to correlate that directly has been invaluable to myself and my team as well as our franchisees in growing our business. So I would say we're barely scratching the surface right now as a brand, but very, very encouraged at the results we're seeing and the impact it's having on our business.
And we're out of time, but just in summary, these are the best practices that we've been able to use in partnership with Denny's and Optimedia to really drive that performance, building on location data for audiences, leveraging location throughout the campaign, and then measuring what matters. Offline is a huge component of mobile, so making sure you're leveraging that in your performance metrics. We appreciate your time. If anybody has any questions, we'll be available. And I just have to give a shout out to the location committee for the MMA. If you're interested, we're looking for new members. Thank you.